So I'm going to talk about continuous delivery. So on our t-shirts, continuous delivery is one of the topics which is mentioned as one of the interesting topics around the GOTO conferences. I'm going to mention a few others as well, as Kanban and Lean and stuff like this. This talk is not going to focus mainly on technical things, because I would like to tell you a bit about how to introduce actually continuous delivery. So I would like to get the audience a little bit better. So I would like to find out who's which kind of role mainly. So who is mainly a developer? Okay, let's say 80%. Who is mainly doing QA? It's the only one. Who is mainly doing operations? 1.5. Actually, it's perfect. That one is saying, yeah, a little bit. That's perfect. That's what I'm aiming for. Who's doing something else? Management? Oh, cool. Did I forget some other role? Okay, good. That's it. So which delivery style do you have in your organization? So is your experience how you deliver actually more close to this kind of very big ship? So you load all the stuff, pack it into containers. It's traveling for months, and with some good luck, it's arriving. Yeah. Some good luck is it's really meant literally. You know, all the containers which are placed above on the outside, they are the cheap ones, right? In case there's a storm, they lose them. Really. There are a lot of lost containers in the ocean. So with a lot of good luck, it's really meant literally. It means in case you do these kind of big deliveries, one experience you're going to have is some of the tiny features may not arrive, right? And it's actually not the biggest risk. The risk with delivering a lot of stuff is, of course, that it takes ages. It will take you months till something is delivered. And speaking of the release process for a company, of course, this one is taking a lot of time and effort as well. And quite often, it's also it's quite often a very, very big nightmare. The release experience I would like to have is more, my picture for is this kind of here. It's from a kaiten sushi. So it's a sushi bar where they have here all the sushi, which is just coming to you, which is called kaiten sushi in Japanese. That means all the stuff you would like to eat is just delivered on the fly, and you can just pick what you would like to have. Perfect. The bucket size is also pretty nice, right? You can try, I tried 2 of those, yeah, maybe looks fine. In case you took something which is not very tasty, yeah, it's not a big deal, right? So it's a very nice style how to deliver things. It's pretty much on-demand delivery. Speaking of more technical release management, rollout procedure, I say, yeah, this kind of style is more in case you could really deploy something to production, or maybe even from your very first commit to production in less than 1 hour. That would be a very perfect time for this one. And of course, it should be all happen automatically, right? Like this sushi stuff. No one has to do something by hand. It's added on one side, and it's taken away by the clients on the other side. Okay, so asking the audience again, what is your style of delivery you're currently experiencing? Who's delivering, let's say, the main product less than once per month? Less than time, it means not every, you don't in an average month you don't deliver one update. So we have 3. Who is delivering 1 per month on average? Interesting. Who is delivering several times a week? Okay. Who is usually delivering several times per day? Okay, cool. We have 2. That's interesting. But actually, that's here something missing. Okay, good. So I would like to focus this talk on how to achieve it, actually to speed up delivery and what helps. But why should we do it? There are a lot of reasons which makes sense. For me, this picture is the most important one. For me, this is the one which is explaining it. Let's take a look at the blue curve here. Let's say you develop stuff very traditionally. It takes 3 months to deliver a certain set of features and to bring it to production, to the customer. Given you're in a startup, yeah, it takes 3 months, you deliver all your features and you have your brilliant feature set which is going to convince all of your customers, and you release it and then you start earning some money. Perfect, right? No. Ouch. You're running out of money before. So in case we write it like that, in case we have time here and we have money over time on the other axis, what is the money you actually earn? That is the surface. That's the surface under your curve. Okay, so that means with the green curve is something you try to deliver some value more early. It means you start more early to have some money, which is nice, right? And in the end, for a startup, it could make a pretty big difference. And also, we should be aware that there are a lot of startups around which are really able to do it, like SoundCloud, but of course a lot of others as well. And for them, it makes a real big difference. So we could learn a lot from these lean startup schemes. Yeah, but of course, not every company is as good and is learning from this kind of scheme. So how we come from this big shift delivery to the sushi delivery style? My hard answer is I have no clue. But having said that, I have no clue how to do it in your ecosystem, because your ecosystem is unique. You might have different faucets, it may look completely different. The only thing I could share is basically I could offer what my learnings are and what my insights and experiences are. So I started as a developer, later went into more roles like a little bit management, also a little bit QA stuff. And at some point of time, we really realized, we had a problem to build and ship our application. It doesn't make any sense, right? So we try hard to develop something, and then no customer can see it. That was frustrating. So I tried to solve this problem, which is sometimes called the last mile of software development. So I tried to focus myself on fixing this one. So it roughly means I spent my last 5 years on doing something like this, introducing continuous delivery, improving the delivery quality in some companies. The first one where I did it was in an eBay company that's called Mobile.de. Actually, it was a very misleading name. It's the biggest platform to sell vehicles in Germany. And it's a big eBay company. When I arrived in this company, a release looked like that. The release branch was created at the point of time of the code freeze. Of course there was some kind of hassle around. You know about the stuff. We're not ready, we have to commit something. The other one, the release manager pushing. And I was a poor release manager. And one developer told me, you're the new release manager, nice to see you, poor guy. It sounds like, hope you survive your first months. And actually it was hard. It was really hard. What I found out actually was all the stuff which was developed was basically crap. So after creating the release branch, what happened? A QA guy had to build the product. Oh, interesting. So a QA guy did some building of the software. Of course, he had no clue what building the software means. So he logged on to one machine and launched the build script, which was good, right? There's a build script, so it's some kind of automated. What was bad actually is that the code was at some quality level, which was not compiling. Very nice. So it took a while till the code was compiling at least the first few modules. Of course, we had to skip the unit tests, right? Because they're broken anyway. Okay, so it took several years to improve the quality of this delivery. In the beginning, we had tried to do one release every 3 weeks, and it of course took a while to deliver it. It roughly took 10 days to stabilize it and to really ship it. 10 days. And it was of course quite a lot of stress and nightmare. And of course we had a lot of production bugs. Very nice. Bad outer quality, very bad experience how to deliver. In the end, we achieved that we improved the cycle time by a factor of 10 or maybe more, and the number of releases really by a factor of 30. Not kidding. So instead of we had one release every 3 weeks in the beginning. In the end, we had 4 contributions which are shipped to production on an average day. Not 4-5 days a week, because, but on 4 days a week. So just somehow it maybe sums up. But in the end, the company was able to really ship tiny contributions several times per day, which was really it was really hard work to get to this point. For the rest of the talk, I'm mainly going to focus on this experience that is at Nokia. So actually, Alex here hired me for Nokia Places to help to introduce continuous delivery. And when he left, I tried to do it. So what we deliver there is a REST-oriented architecture, which is serving the places, like here, the Nokia house, shown on some Maps application. For instance, on devices or in the maps.nokia.com application, or a lot of others as well. So there's a big REST-oriented architecture, and just to fear you a little bit, that's how an early picture looked like. And this rectangle here is actually the scope which I take care of. So actually we have a very big system with a lot of customers, which are showing here above, and with a lot of other systems. What we achieved for places is actually that when I arrived, we had a cycle time which was far beyond 35 days, and so roughly speaking, maybe 4 to 6 releases have been delivered per year, maybe a few more. Let's say 12.
Every 3 weeks is...
But some people are telling me different stories. So actually, big releases, yeah, maybe once per month, maybe in best case every 3 weeks. The current setup is the way that actually what we see in the background is our done column, all the stuff we deliver. And actually that's an old picture. Currently we delivered, for instance, 80 changes to production since January. So we speeded up the delivery pretty much. That means in total the cycle time was reduced pretty much. So for all the old applications, it improved by a factor of 3. For new applications that we launched, actually the cycle time is 30 times better than the one we had before for legacy applications. Which is one very good learning. In case you would like to improve something, try to pick something which is easy. So in case you do have a new application, use this as a guinea pig to improve your delivery. Because in the beginning, you cannot cause harm, right? Because it's not a product which is used by the customer. Perfect. So try to improve your delivery. In total, we increased the number of releases roughly by a factor of 20, and the success rate actually by a factor of something like 10. That means we almost never have to do rollbacks or correcting stuff which is ending up in production. Which is very important as well, as unplanned work was reduced very, very much, up to a very low degree, whereas before unplanned work was maybe took 80% of the full capacity. Good. So what helped us to really do it? There are a lot of stories to tell, really a lot of stories. I tried to select a few of them. One is actually try to set up the teams appropriately. So try to focus the people on the job which is to be done. In the beginning, we had something like we had development, we had QA, release management, and operations. So a pretty common setup, right? Most companies have something like that. And there is something which is called Conway's Law, and as I understand it, it means something like that. In case you build your organizational structure, then you will have a very, very similar communication structure as well. It means in your group, you usually have a better communication. From one group to another, it's decreasing very much. It also will mean that maybe a team like that is going to produce its own stuff, which is more isolated. So usually it will mean a QA team will, for instance, create their QA tools, right? It's very funny to have QA tools. I thought we have a product, and we all have a product, right? But in the end, you hear people saying something like this, yeah, we have here our test suite, and the QA guy will mean with the QA guy's test suite. Like the application developer has its own production code, right? It's a company who has code. And so it also will mean, in case you have a lot of different groups working together for one process and it comes really into a lot of phases, it will take a lot. It will really take a while to deliver your stuff. So therefore we try to replace a team like that with one, actually, or a lot of teams like that, with actually more one team. So actually we try to combine QA and release management and operation and all the build management aspects in one team. So this is some kind of DevOps approach that we tried. Of course, there are a lot of different interpretations of DevOps, which you might have. But here, for this case, it really helped to build one team which is focused on really delivering the stuff. Because then you could overcome all the problems that the QA guys are focused on just improving their test suite. And for instance, in the meantime, they're blocking the current rollouts as their test suite is broken and cannot be used to test rollouts. That's weird. Or the operations guys are too busy to stabilize the platform, and actually that means they are not interested in rolling out stuff. In the traditional model, operations guys have to be afraid of all the stuff which the developers are producing, because usually the operations guys are paid for having a very stable platform with no downtimes, right? And the developers, when in the case they are more paid for features, it means there's some kind of conflict. So we tried to combine it a little bit.
But yeah, the team seems to consist mainly of QA and release managers. I mean, there seems to be one engineer only. Yeah,
and this was a very, very big problem in the beginning. So when we started, the situation 1 year ago, 15 months ago, 18 months ago, was very much that we had also a very, very flaky, broken production system. It was very hard to stabilize it. And most of the tasks had to be done by operations engineers only. And the developers or all the other guys are not allowed to touch this. And so, but actually we had in the company a very, very big capacity problem. So we hadn't had not more engineers. We had to fight pretty hard actually to integrate Eric into our team. In the beginning it was even worse. We had 2 days of Eric working for the team. But guess what happened in case someone is working 2 days for a team? Then he's doing it sometimes, and then he is disturbed by a lot of other stuff which maybe wasn't finished on time. So it's really, really hard to have people which are not really integrated in the team. So for us it was very, very important to integrate the only, let's say, the only hardcore operations guy fully in the team as a full dedicated team member, also of course meaning full co-location, 24 hours and 40 hours per week. Yeah, he's allowed to go home and sleep and have some drinks, of course, sometimes. Regarding the others, actually all the QA roles are fading away. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. But actually all of them are no longer just QA guys, they're doing everything. Because actually we are shifting a lot of the activities to all the other guys as well. Okay, in order to focus our process, we use Kanban and Lean. So a lot of the ideas behind continuous delivery comes actually from the Lean approach, and was developed actually by Toyota for producing cars, vehicles, and they found out that actually most of the companies are too slow with delivering cars to the customer. So they really analyze why they are so slow, and they set up some kind of improvement framework for an improvement process, how to speed it up. And Kanban is pretty much focused, or Lean as I understand it, is pretty much focused on reducing the cycle time and the lead time. So lead time starts when the customer asks for a car, and it ends in case the car is delivered to the customer. So it would be weird in case the company is asked when the car is going to be delivered to answer, yeah, it's already done, but we have to test it. The customer will be very frustrated because he didn't ask for stuff like this, right? It's showing your corporate underwear. Customer will not accept to see stuff like that. He wants to have a car, a full working operating car. And they really did very, very great work of identifying actually where they had a lot of waiting time in their process. So they tried pretty hard to reduce waiting time and queues. And also they reduced very much when they have started to stacking a lot of things. So in the end, it's pretty much some kind of on-demand delivery, and especially around the parts for the vehicles.
Is there any meaning behind the different colors of the?
Yeah. So we do some color coding here. The red stuff is a bug. Orange stuff is a release we have to do. Yellow stuff is usually a task. So we use some color coding. And furthermore, it's maybe a little bit small. No, I have increased a little bit. So we also use some avatars to place it on a ticket to say it's me who's working on this one. Because actually what you see, we have quite a lot of stuff to do. And of course we have also some kind of different topics. As we had to deliver for a lot of different teams, every one of those teams got its own lane, like this, or also for different aspects to really see what is going on. So for us it helps pretty much to make all the stuff visible on the board. With Kanban then, your next step after making it visible is that you try to limit how much stuff you do. Because there's one learning, that is, in case you try to do a lot of stuff in parallel, it will all take longer. So what you do is you limit your work in progress, and then you're going to be faster. So actually my team had a lot of problems with doing so, as we had a lot of tiny things to do at the same time. Actually, we never introduced a very, very hard work in progress limit. But nevertheless, using the avatars and the number really helped in the end. Together with stand-ups where actually the people are asked, why you have 5 open tasks? Is this not probably a little bit too much? So we had some kind of soft adjustment regarding the work in progress limits. We talked about waste regarding Lean, right? So for a car manufacturer, actually, when they produce value, at the moment where the car is arriving at the customer, no single minute before. It also means that all the parts which had been produced and stacked somewhere, what they are for the company, are they something good? No, actually they are waste. They should really try to have very, very small stacks of things to do. So a lot of stuff is waste. Coming back to our Kanban board, basically all the stuff which I'm showing you here is waste. It's because these are not the main things we deliver. So we made something which is maybe not very common, but we set up one very important Kanban board, that's our main Kanban board, which is focusing on our main value stream. And for a delivery team, the main value stream is something like, what you deliver to production, right? So we really focus on that one. That means all just the changes which are arriving in production are going to be on this wall. And it's just the only thing we are going to report. Because all the other stuff around is basically just waste because they are supporting activities. For instance, we shouldn't count and say, we did some 10 very great tasks to repair our Jenkins infrastructure. Because this one is not really providing value for the customers. Value we provide is that we are able to deliver it to production. This of course includes that we fix build infrastructure. The metric we use to improve it is what we call the release cycle time. In our case, it means the development team told us, we are ready, here is your RPM, and can you please test it and deploy it. And So we start counting when we have the announcement, and we stop counting when it's actually delivered to production. And we try pretty much to reduce this, what we call release cycle time. Of course, very important is the aspect of automation. And there's a lot of sayings like, yeah, in case you have a process which is not very nice, yeah, actually automating it could cause more harm than good. And so automating the wrong thing could be dangerous. That's quite often said. From my point of view, that's the biggest bullshit I ever heard. So using this one as an excuse not to automate will kill you. As a delivery team, you have to be good in what you're doing. Being good in what you're doing is, in case you do it several times, and it's related to delivery, it's like a rollout, we have to automate it, right? And there, you have to automate everything. In case you do something twice, start automating it. We spent quite a lot of time actually automating our rollout. That was the stuff we had been focused basically, last fall and all the stuff. So we decided to take a system which is able to present what we are doing. That is, in this case, we exchanged Jenkins, something which is really able to model the flow we have, the flow from the first commit over some compile and build steps, deployment steps, test steps, more test steps, more test steps, more deployments, and all kinds of stuff. We modeled it into one tool which is some kind of appropriate for that. That's ThoughtWorks Go. And this one is focused of actually modeling pipelines. And so actually it was very, very easy for us to provide the rollout automation because we didn't have to deal with the tool around, right? Because it was very easy to do it with the tool. Instead, we just focused on modeling what we would like to do, and then we focused on implementing it. And we really implemented it just step by step. For us also the value is that we really make it very, very visible what is happening in every phase. It might not be as important in case your rollout takes 3 months to do so. But in case you would like to do one every day, it is very important that you know, for instance, what have to be deployed where and what happened. So this one helped us a lot. We made it very visible and we tried to automate everything. On the other hand, it's a hard barrier to automate everything, right? And actually you have to get started. And usually when you start, you have to do stuff manually. So we tried not to block, for instance, to implement stuff like this just due to the fact that there are some manual steps. No, in the beginning we had tons of manual steps because we started with manual steps. So we modeled all the manual steps in the tool as well. So they're not allowed to block us. And then we had one pattern that is actually, before we implement automation, we first implement the verification. For instance, there should be an RPM deployed with this specific revision number. Before you automate that actually really the exact stuff is deployed, you implement first that you have the verification for this version number. And this could help a lot. And usually this is much easier than rather than just trying to deploy something. Maybe it's failing and maybe you never ever realize that you deployed the wrong thing. So we really try to use the pattern verify first and then implement it. It also means that we had of our general approach, it's, let's say, close to be test-driven. Yeah, not really, because it's actually quite hard to automate everything what we do around deployments and server setup. Of course you could do. Maybe also with using a lot of cloud services, there is actually a very, very good chance to do so. But at this point of time, we didn't have the situation that we could do all the stuff in the cloud. So for instance, what was pretty difficult to set up new clusters and stuff like that. So we couldn't start with automating everything. But we did something else. Rather than test-driven development or acceptance test-driven development, we did something like acceptance criteria-driven development. That meant we discuss first, in case we're done, what we should observe. And then we really try to have this feedback from the tool to verify what we did. For instance, this meant for implementing the rollout automation, what was the best test? To do one successful rollout using the new version. And we also, Good. Speaking of the DevOps, so DevOps is of course some kind of buzzword which is used quite a lot. I also would like to add DevQA or something like that. Actually, I don't get why there is no appropriate word for doing something like that. For us, it means that we try to get rid of all these very, very rigid assignments from people to specific tasks and very specific roles. For instance, that the developer here is just focusing on all the development work. And it means he's not allowed to do any deployment on any kind of server, which is weird, right? And the QA guy is just doing automation. And maybe with black box tests, and all kinds of stuff. He's not taking care of how the feature is actually developed. Maybe he's not even asked or included in the discussion before the feature is developed. And of course, never ever someone talks to the operation guy, right? Just 5 minutes before they throw the very, very big feature over the wall and say, we have to deploy it till tomorrow on 100 servers. And then they find out that it's not scaling. So that's a very, very usual model. It also often means something like that for setting up the very first box for a developer to test, let's say something beyond your local machine and local host, that usually they have to ask the operations guys, can you please set up this box for me? But then you end up in the situation that he's saying, yeah, but we have some production bugs here, and this is of course much, much more important, right? Because it's production. So what happens? Poor developer is blocked, which means we lose capacity. So, and for us it means a little bit the following, that actually we start that all the people take over a lot of aspects and a lot of tasks from the different roles before. So that means that the usual developer is doing quite a lot of stuff which is also related to testing, right? For instance, a lot of test automation stuff. Because developers are very good in developing things, right? So why should the test automation be developed by someone else who has, on average, seen in most companies, less development experience? Because sometimes people started to use the poor dumb guy to do QA. So developers take over more of the green stuff, the test stuff, but also they start to take over more of the operation stuff, especially using cloud services. It's no longer really magic to set up in your own host, right? It's pretty easy. You could log in on Amazon and just click a button to create a new instance. It's very, very easy. And so the development guys can take over more responsibility regarding this stuff. So for instance, this will not mean something like, I set up my very first box and configure it the first time. It's maybe too hard in the beginning. But for instance, to change existing systems, that would be a good start for a developer. And using this pattern, so we actually shift around a lot of the activities we do. And to be honest, this wasn't an easy experience at Nokia. So Nokia was pretty fond of this model. Operations blocking everything and no one is allowed to touch all these systems. Ouch. Of course, they had some very, very bad experiences in the past, right? The developers deployed something because they had access and they brought down everything. Yeah. And relaxing these rules a little bit doesn't mean that we're actually going to be careless and just deploying something. It will actually mean that we deploy with some kind of very, very highly automated procedure, which are really low risk because they're already done hundreds of times. So actually there is no big risk that there is a failure. For me, the most important learning is actually around introducing continuous delivery is this one. Eat your own dog food. For most companies, It means, for instance, for SoundCloud, that they use their own tools, that they upload their own songs, they figure out how it feels to use their product. For instance, at Microsoft, they started already quite a long time ago that every employee had to use the nightly build of Windows every morning. And in case this one was broken, it really caused some damage. But in the end, it really improved the quality because no longer the nightly build was crap, right? It's a very hard mechanism to really improve your product. In case the first one who's using it is just the end customer, it's really, really bad. But why I'm talking about it related to continuous delivery? For me, this is pretty much because you could set up your improvement process like that, right? So in case we would, for instance, we would like to go from no rollout automation to fully automated rollout, which is doing everything. Yeah, then you assign it to some guys, they figure out what to do, then they come up with a big roadmap and plan, and they estimate it for 3 months, and then they develop it, it takes 4 months, 5 months, and then you try first to use it, of course it's broken, it brings down everything. Okay, this pattern is this one, right? This is this blue pattern. In order to implement improvements, we wait a long time and try to implement everything at the same time. And actually, in case we really believe and understand that continuous delivery is creating value, then we should do so for our automation process, right? That means we just try to implement the very, very first thing which helps in just that. This was very, very hard, especially also very, very hard for me. So I started as a programmer. So I wanted to write clean code, right? And of course in the beginning I had some tendency to write very, very generic code because I know, in 2 weeks I have to reconfigure it like that, as this application has to be exchanged with this one and what to configure this value and this value and this value. But wait a minute, I start with one application only. I would like to automate the rollout of one application only. I do not need any variables for that. So one example, we tried very hard to write non-generic code. Very, very specific, which is very hard in the beginning. Very, very hard in the beginning. But on the other hand, this was, for instance, also helped to build up trust. We had some members in the team who didn't have so much experience with automation things. So for them, giving them a very, very big, complex scripting engine which takes a parameter from there and something from there, I wouldn't trust it. So for instance, we started with the very first rollout version we had, beyond the manual step, was that we actually just wrote down all the steps which the engineer executed on the first box by hand, put it in the script, transferred this one to the next box and repeated the same steps. Very, very easy. And of course we did it in a very, very controlled manner, right? Because we touched one box at one point of time. Very controlled. So no, we don't take any risk. Okay, later, next step for instance was, it was a little bit funny that we every time log in onto the production host and then execute some comments. So we introduced some deployment users which are allowed to do so, so we executed all the comments from remotely, just step by step by step. And also during this phase, we had been very, very carefully, right? Because we didn't trust it. So we did all the steps by hand, verified everything, scrolled through every logs, every single line for every deployment. In case we trusted it, we continued with the second box we upgraded. So we started very, very carefully. That means a sequence like that for us meant that we actually went through applying hundreds of changes. So in order to do 80 rollouts, or I don't know, more 120 over the last year, we implemented maybe roughly 200 or 300 changes. A full sequence of very, very tiny baby steps. In order to select what you would like to do at which point of time, this is usually, of course, very, very tricky, right? usually you have to find some kind of balance between I deliver features and I improve my product. So in the development setup, usually it means we deliver features, so we implement a new feature or fix a bug, or on the other hand we pay back technical debt. And you always have to find this ratio, right? And it's pretty hard discussion. And for a delivery team like mine, is actually we had 3 major activities. One is deliver new features. Here, that means we have to deliver rollouts to production, changes which were coming from the development teams. We would of course like to improve something, right? The green stuff. But actually we started having a lot of firefighting. So it looked a little bit like that. We had quite a lot of firefighting. Every release was a real nightmare, and there was no time left to do improvements. Ouch. Okay, but how to change it? We tried to do it with one baby step at a time. So we selected the very first thing which hurts us most. And for selecting it, you could take a lot of things into account, like how hard is this to do? For instance, how long does it take? You could take into account risk and actually what it brings you. And what it brings you could maybe mean that you really measure the minutes that you would like to improve your overall metric, your cycle time. So for instance, one very, very important driver is you would like to improve the cycle time, right? So every improvement you do must be related in some sense to the cycle time, and otherwise it's worthless. So this is the main driver. Other aspects which are also very important is you should find out which kind of problems are some kind of difficult to approach at which point of time, right? Quite often to change stuff like this is very political, and for instance, you cannot tell the operations manager in the beginning, yeah, we have to have automated access to the Nagios and the load balancers and to this one and this one, otherwise our rollout is not working. The answer will be, sorry guys, I don't trust you. The operations guy is going to do it by hand. This will be the answer in the beginning. And it's very clear that this is the answer in the beginning, as there was no chance for the other one to build up trust. You never delivered something. You never delivered something which would help him to create some trust, right? So it helps a lot to pick something which is easy, maybe a low-hanging fruit, and to approach the things which are very tricky at a later point of time. For instance, for us it meant we had to improve the approval process for our rollouts. In the beginning, we had to ask 3 times for approval before we had been allowed to deploy to production, and we had a lot of waiting time for that. And actually, but later, the approvers found out that actually they're not really verifying our changes in detail. They're just clicking and verifying a few more formal things. But with having more rollouts and more rollouts and more rollouts, actually we improved their understanding of our process, and we improved the trust they have. So in the case they say, yeah, your rollouts are always so boring, nothing is happening, then they're really likely to click the button. And then you have a very, very good chance actually to no longer bother someone like that. Then you will agree, yeah, okay, prove that you do all the changes like that, given you do it in this period of time. Something like that. So it's very, very important that you pick your right battle at the right point of time.
I mean, what you said initially when you showed the slide is that there was too much time spent on firefighting, right?
Yeah.
But when you said what to improve, you said you would rather focus on cycle time and building trust. I mean,
yeah.
I would have thought that you would say, well, I need to do something to get the amount of firefighting down.
Yeah, yeah. And that's true. And actually, for us, it meant we had 2 different reasons for firefighting. Let's say flaky systems. The current status of the system was flaky, and the other one was actually the rollout procedure itself was a problem and caused some other harm. So we tried to stabilize this one. So actually, also for simplifying the firefighting, what is the best mechanism to roll out a hotfix that you have to roll out very immediately? That is to press the same button that you usually press. So one of our stakeholders especially, he's very, very fond of having actually this magic button in the hand. And it's really like that. I'm running around with an iPad and here is a button, come on, press it. And then it's deploying the stuff to production immediately. And even in case it's a new big feature release, or not so big as they are delivering quite often, or it's a hotfix which they have to deliver in a few minutes, right? So in this case, automation is a rescue. But of course, we also try to tackle what is very flaky for our systems and how to improve these things as well. So we pretty much try to address with this improvement stuff we had that we reduce firefighting and delivery time. And in the end, it's helped us a little bit that we had, let's say, these kind of very long rollouts in the beginning and the long phases where you had a lot of firefighting, less improvement, and delivery took a lot of time. And with improving a little bit, we actually immediately had the advantage that the next rollout was more easy. And also worth to mention the stress level that a rollout is producing. So one from ThoughtWorks, principal engineer, consultant, when he's teaching the seminars about the continuous delivery stuff, he's asking actually more questions than I asked. He's also asking, okay, would you trust your rollout automation up to this degree that you go to a bar, order your first beer, drink it, log in, press the deployment button, and order a few other beers? For most people, the answer is no. But when he told me about that, I realized, yeah, actually, yeah, we have this kind of trust. So I told him, yeah, I trust it. Come on, let's do it right now. And we really did it as a demo. We deployed to production because it was that easy. And it's not that all the systems are as stable that never ever is something going wrong. But we have all these tests in place which are actually catching all those problems before. So in case something is messed up in our technical infrastructure, which might happen, what's going to be the result? The result is usually that one of the servers is going to be red and not green after deployment. So we stop, fix it, and then we continue. But we usually try very, very hard not to end up in a situation where we bring down production completely. Good. I didn't mention a lot of other topics. So actually, I didn't talk a lot about QA. Very important for us actually to pass back the responsibility for QA to the developers. Very luckily, with a lot of teams I'm working together, it was very, very naturally for them. So actually, they hadn't been fond of that just QA has some kind of knowledge around there. No, they wanted to focus on the stuff. Anyway, so they did already acceptance test-driven development and test-driven development. And they introduced a lot of coding dojos to practice stuff like this. Other aspects, of course, we try to do pairing to reduce the bus factor. We try pretty much to increase the level of trust. And we have to always take into account this very, very much about people, right? That's also the reason why I focus this talk not on technical things. When you would like to introduce stuff like this, the technical stuff is easy. The problem is how to convince the right people to do the right things at the right point of time. Of course, we have DevOps. DevOps is important, test-driven development. And one of the most important ones is that you actually learn how to cut your stories into small things. So like your product owner of your small startup has to learn how to find a very, very small story and not this big story which will take 3 months. He has to learn how to find a small story. And the same idea is that really helped us to really apply these baby steps. For this, we have to learn how to cut things into much, much smaller things. Good. I would like to end with showing you a few pointers to some stuff which might be worth to read. Continuous Delivery is the main book covering this stuff. Around Lean, there's actually stuff around Lean and software development by the Popendix. Henry Knieberg is pretty great. He just recently published this book here, Lean from the Trenches, and he's really explaining how they managed to do a very big, some kind of government or police project in Sweden to approach us with Lean. Very, very pragmatic and damned successfully. The oldest book here is A Pragmatic Programmer, because it actually already gave all of the ideas which are there behind. In case you do have to do something a lot of times, automate it. Around DevOps, very unfortunately, there is not a lot of literature available. There is the InfoQ stuff and a little bit stuff around, and I heard about one guy who actually starting to write the first book about DevOps, but actually there is not a lot of stuff around. Okay.